A couple of years ago, I actually wrote a book on digital transformation, and I'm not here pitching it, guys, but what was fascinating is I finished it just before the pandemic, and there's two things to note about that. One, never write a book just before a pandemic, and the other thing is a lot changed relative to transformations since the pandemic happened. So on the good side, first of all, many of you and your employers should be very grateful that you guys were able to make so many big pivots in the last couple of years. Some of you introduced new operating and business models. You went from maybe walk-in retail to omni-channel retail to entirely virtual, what have you. You had to figure out, are we going to pay people, through remote mechanisms where there are no longer any time clocks. I could go on and on. There were a bunch of different changes you made, and some were not terribly transformational, they were more evolutionary, and some were flat out amazing. So a lot of things did happen, and I want to make sure we're clear on that. But just because you can call it transformational doesn't necessarily make it so. And these days, I'm based out of the Indianapolis area, and I don't know if it shows up well, but there was a big corruption scandal going because a bunch of houses that were theoretically transformed, they kind of look like that one up on that slide. And so just because you say it and you transform doesn't mean you did it. So let's talk about what's been going on here and what you need to do looking forward. First of all, I'm going to have some definitional points about what really is transformational. That sounds dull, but I'll make it interesting. I want to talk a little bit about how business competition things are making big changes. And I've already hinted the second last point about not all the digitalization efforts are really all that terribly transformative. But with that in mind, every one of those changes usually I see has huge impacts on the organization. It puts a big stress on it. As you make some of these big shifts, for example, if you're a manufacturer and all of a sudden you want to have a factory of the future, well, now you need to have a whole different set of skills with people who know about machine learning and algorithmic tuning and all this other stuff to deal with the huge volumes of big data coming off of these new sensors and other devices. You walk around as many shop floors as I have, you realize that that's not a skill set the current workforce has. So there's some big stressors that come about on this. The first problem, though, with a lot of transformational projects is they don't have the correct vision. That they're taking something either terribly incremental in its approach. You know, it's so obvious that you would do something like that. It's not transformative, it's incrementalism. And there's a big difference between the two. There's also this problem where a lot of people think that because we took a manual process and we automated it, well, that was a digitalization deal, and therefore it must be digital transformation. And, that's not really it either. That's just an automation activity. It's what the transformation stuff has all these words that usually have an RE in front of it. Was it reimagined? Was it rethought? Was it, redesigned? And that's where you see some of the really big changes that happen. But that's also where you see the bigger outcomes occur as well. I've been doing the analyst bit for a long time, and about 35 years. And I can tell you that one of the first applications that was ever automated was payroll. Some of the very first payroll systems actually appeared in the late 1950s on computers. Many companies are on their fifth payroll system, and some of you probably can beat that record handily. But just re-automating an already automated function is only going to give you some very small incremental benefits. It's not really transformative. So let's keep going. I also hear a lot of companies talking about these kinds of things. We're going to have a factory in the future. We're going to reimagine our processes. And depending on what's in that definition, not every one of those kind of initiatives is actually biggest one right now that I hear that just makes my skin crawl are ERP vendors who want you to spend a lot of money to re-implement the old solution you already have, but under a new modern platform. All right, well that's like living in the same old house, living in a mobile home, and you put new tires on it. I mean, you didn't really transform it at all. It's just new plumbing, if you will. So, I don't know that necessarily any of those are transformational, depending on what's going on in, the company along with that project. So the first thing I'd like you guys to do is just yell out some answers here. It's not transformational if it what? Somebody give me a start here.
Standardizing.
Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to find.
Standardizing.
Okay. I'm trying to also find a spot where the lights aren't blinding. Yeah, okay. Give me another one.
Institutionalize.
If it's just strictly a technology deal, it's not probably necessary. Well, it may not be terribly transformational. If it doesn't, I would add on here, if it doesn't include the people side of things, it definitely is going to be very transformational. Let's just go right into some of these points. If you are looking at any project you're considering today, if you think it's transformative today, it's going to deliver competitive advantage, it's unique, innovative, and all those other kind of words, just think about how long before you hit the next column where, what you're doing is just going to become a best practice. And this is one of the problems some of the ERP vendors have, is they talk about you need to implement something, but in another couple of years, it's the same thing that 1,000 other firms are doing and all your competitors are doing it, so it's lost any competitive advantage, it's competitive parity at this point. And then longer term, it just becomes table stakes. So transformative is definitely a relative term. It is relative to a point in time. And what is it you mean when you say transformative? Practically speaking, when I have conversations with clients, usually I would tell you that the vision that a lot of clients have is very, very, very near-term focused. It's what they think they can get implemented this year or next year, and that's it for long-term vision. If you really want to have a transformative outcome, you need to definitely move that timeline out a lot further, and I'll give you some examples on that topic in just a moment. So, the best projects are the ones where you have a full-time project team who is charged with discovering what is the art of the possible. Now let's talk about that full-time team. I had a client call me the other day, and this executive was happy to announce that he's going to be the part-time leader of this transformation project, and he has a lot of other people on his team who are all going to be half-time workers on this project. And I told him, no way am I going to get close to this project. Because, and for the HR people in the room, you're going to really understand this point. When you borrow people and they're just part-time, chances are they still have their day job doing their regular work. They still have their performance, their compensation and their performance management metrics are still tied to the old job. Everything's tied to the old job. So guess what happens when you try and make the transformation project a priority? They're still not going to make it a priority because everything about them is still one foot in the old job. So if you're going to do it, you need to get people who are really going to commit to doing it. And they have to commit to change their trajectory of their career so that they can be, they can be free to be as great as they can be on this kind of initiative. Sorry for the distraction on there, but let's talk about the art of the possible. What's missing in a lot of companies, believe it or not, is just to even have permission to come to an event like this. How many here had to get approval to come here? Show hands. Oh, almost everybody, okay? And that's kind of sad in a way, you know, that you're going to be able to see a bunch of other technologies and technology companies. You can rub shoulders with colleagues and find out what they're doing. You can become much more, and the key word here is cosmopolitan. To be cosmopolitan is to be exceptionally aware of one's environment. And that's the kind of person that you need on these projects. Not one person doing that. Everybody needs to be that way. They need to be intellectually curious. They need to be able to go out and talk to venture capitalists and private equity investors and whoever else is putting money into some of these new technologies. Why? Because you want to find out what did they look at and what did they discard? Why do they feel that way? You want people who really know what the future it could possibly contain, and you want to be able to then stitch this stuff together to kind of see what the future could look like if you were able to prototype it. You guys are awfully quiet for your audience. All right. So with the vision, the one thing I'm going to tell you I really have a problem with, I put it in red, is when a vendor shows up and says, we've got the high-tech transformational project for you, and first you need to pay us $500,000 US, and we'll develop that strategy for you, which just happens to contain all of our technology that we sell in our catalog. And you're like, why spend the money and why outsource, if you will, that vision work to a third party like that? If you really want to see something cool and special, you need to get out there and go play in traffic and find out what it is. The other thing to watch out for is the death by 1,000 cuts. This is a plan where you're going to eventually, possibly someday, get to a sort of transformative solution by implementing dozens and dozens of small little pieces, and hopefully it will all come together and you don't lose momentum on it. It's possible you can do this, and I've had lots of conversations with people about this point, and I have a lot of clients who, very practically go, tell me about, Brian, we just got it busted up into smaller chunks. And I understand that sentiment, that problem, but the issue here is if you don't paint the end state and strive to hit it, you're going to miss it. And I'll give you a good example of that in just a moment. The last thing I want to point out, my favorite expression is I love those clients who have champagne tastes and beer budgets, okay? That's a tough bunch to work with, They'll tell you, Brian, we really want to go with that real state-of-the-art, kind of stuff. We want to really transform the company, but we only got like $20 in the till, for that. It isn't going to happen. So the next thing you got to ask yourself is, are we even if you get the vision right, you know where you're going to go, now do you have the right project to make it happen? Now, I definitely want to take a moment here because I found something out when I did the book years ago, but one of my clients called me back just a couple months ago about a panel, and the guy said, man, that pyramid of yours, we've used it in all our management meetings, and I didn't realize it was so helpful or so famous, so I put it back in this presentation. Now, when I talk to the executive committee or the board of a lot of companies, I find out that they think their company is process excellent and is just killing it out there, internally and in the market. But when I talk to the people on the shop floor, whatever, the operational people, I find out they're one piece of equipment away from failing and the whole company's going down the toilet. They are that close to being dysfunctional. In fact, they'll even tell me when I ask them to score themselves, they go, Brian, we're right here on that line. That's exactly where we are. And it's funny and it's sad all at the same time. Because what you see is companies at this level, they've got a very poor current environment. In fact, it's a place you wouldn't want the next level up are the functioning outfits. These are the companies that they pay the employees, they get their regulatory filings done on time. You know, things happen, but like sausage making and legislation, you don't want to lift the covers and see how it actually gets done. There's probably a mountain of spreadsheets in there. There's a bunch of sneakerhead stuff. And very few of any processes are actually working at quartile 1 or quartile 2 performance levels. Now that third level, the process excellence, this is a good company here. This is somebody that's really got their stuff together in many of their processes. They're already operating at super low cost, high productivity, high efficiency. Now they're the ones, and really they're the only ones who actually have the right to try and pull off something really big and transformative. Now, I want you to think about this. I have clients all the time go, Brad, why can't I just jump from here? I know we're screwed up. Why don't we just go straight to a factory of the future? And I go, because you haven't done the work to clean up the stuff in between. You've still got to straighten out your processes. You got to figure out what they're really going to look like. And you're not going to be able to leapfrog around some of this. You're going to have to grow through it. My own experience now tells me that this area is about 70% of the market. Sadly enough. It's maybe another 20. There's only a handful of companies you can run into where they're already at the very tip top of where they're supposed to be. And what do? They're so paranoid about ever losing that top position. They've always got tons of full-time teams looking at all kinds of new future states and future ways of doing things that they even have competing teams trying to figure out the best way that we can move the company forward in a flash. So what I want you guys to do is I want you to think about this and answer this. What level is your firm at? Are you dysfunctional, functional, process excellent, or transform industry? So let's just start off. Not to embarrass anybody, if you're dysfunctional, I'm not even going to ask you to raise your hand. How about that? Who here thinks they've got a functional firm? Any hands? Okay, that's good. Probably 20% in here. Who thinks they're process excellent? Oh, we got a couple. Okay, that's good. Anybody here think they're really just kicking butt and transforming the industry right now? We got one, okay. And he works in People Matters. All right. I'm pointing this out, guys, not to humor it, but to point out very seriously that if you're down at the bottom, you're down at this level, your focus has to be doing the right things that are going to make this company stay alive because you're so broken and so screwed up. So don't even waste your energy trying to think about doing something highly transformative because you got bigger problems to fix. I put some cheat notes over here on the side for those of you taking pictures. This is what I find. I'm down in here on the borderline. Spreadsheets, lots of technical debt, a lot of really old software in use. It's not, it's falling out of favor. This is the slide that if you take a picture back and share with other management in your company, this is the one that goes from a 1-minute discussion to a 2-hour talk because they're going to be fighting among each other about, oh man, we're not really that screwed bad. In fixed asset accounting, oh, we're here, man. We are so here. The rest of the company in the toilet, but man, we're killing it in fixed asset accounting. So, if there was one slide today, this is the one you really want to kind of focus in on. All right. Here's what it looks like from an HR version. These are the kinds of projects or the things that I hear people are doing at the different levels. And you notice, when I go to an HR show like this one, a lot of the conversation, people are talking about, Ryan, we're bringing robotic process automation to the forefront of, pick your choice, recruiting, talent acquisition, performance measurement, whatever. robotics, machine learning, RPA, a lot of that's usually up near the top. For some of you, how many here actually have a shared service organization in your company? Anybody? Quite a few, actually. Okay. So a lot of shared service operations are here, or they should be here, let's put it that way, and they're looking to move further up. And that's perfectly correct from a position and strategy perspective. But down in here, we got problems like replace the starter HR system. These are almost criminal when I see these things. Somebody wrote something in Excel and they call that an HR system. And it's still running in the company 20 years after it got founded. I'm like, grow up, buy a real package with real controls and security and everything else. You can see other things here. Get rid of the technical debt, get things at least up to a standard of what a good functioning company ought to be, moving up to, in the middle here for the process excellence. But this is kind of the scorecard on kind of where are the initiatives, and it'll help you figure out what should you be, spending energy on or not. It's not perfect, but it gives you an idea. The other thing I want you to think about is the transformational goal attainable? This one's a landmine waiting to hit you. Many of you are in companies where you've got a solid technology staff and they know how to implement a package. So the odds of them being able to do that and be successful are pretty good. But just putting in a package isn't terribly transformative. It's what your company may have competency in is not necessarily what you need competency to be transformational. And that's why you see things like, I'm still trying to figure out how people can change a company culture, for example. You may say that's a terribly important thing to do from a strategy and a business requirements perspective, and it could be very transformational if you could pull it off. My question is, how many HR organizations actually have the kind of people in that group that know anything about changing a culture? I mean, let's be honest. Your company, again, probably has a bunch of skills in some things, like maybe your company's very acquisitive and has acquired a lot of companies. You know how to put them together. That's a competence you have. It may not, but that's not necessarily a transformative competency. So the more you get on this side, the more likely your chance of a failure is going to be if you can't find the critical skills that are going to make a difference. You guys still with me? Okay. I know this is heady stuff, but okay. One of my favorite pictures, considering what happened to me at Delta Airlines yesterday, so I'm still waiting on my bags. That's the update I have right now. I want to talk a bit about some of the risks that are out there. One of them is something I call the here and now issues. These are how am I going to fix the systems that we have and do a transformation at the same time? Or how do you deal with the fact that we have a really antiquated ERP, which turns out to be a real problem for a lot of companies. Their ERP system has tentacles that go out all over and all kinds of operational other systems, including all the back office ones. It's the problem, and no one wants to fix it. Because HR goes, hey, my system, I'm not going to pay to fix that thing, and everybody else is saying the same thing. So you have all these here and now kind of problems to deal with. And you also have my really odious one is, what do you do when you have an ERP vendor who has too much influence in setting your systems and technology direction? Okay? That's when you call me up. Seriously, I enjoy beating up vendors. That's why I'm an analyst, I guess. So the next thing I want to tell you about is you need to make sure that your plans include the concept of convergence. Convergence is you think about not building and implementing something that you can find and is available today out in the expo area here at the show. You want to know what new technologies are coming out about 3 or 4 years from now. And you want to start building a machine, a program. You want to start hiring skills and people and building up capability and doing the design work and coming up with a new process flow so that in another couple of years, when you're really ready to turn the switch on, the technology will now finally be ready for prime time. Build for convergence, don't spend 2 years trying to implement something that you saw here at this show in 2019. Because I guarantee you, it will not be transformative. It's going to be yesterday's news. We good? So what's the biggest risk? I'm talking about risk management. What's the biggest risk you think you're going to need to manage for your transformation? Let's hear some ideas. People, tech, time, leadership. Who's got an idea? Data. Okay. Give me another one.
Resistance to change.
I didn't hear all that.
Resistance to change.
Okay. Come on this side of the room. You guys are kind of quiet. You put over there laughing with me or at me. I don't know most of the talk. So.
Budget.
Hmm?
Budget. Money.
Assets?
You said budget.
All right. Something you might try to do, I use a variant of this with clients all the time, is this is Amazon. Amazon has the working backwards process where you have to write a press release set in the future that talks about what the project delivered. My version, as I've been doing for like 20 years, is actually write the cover story to a Fortune magazine article that's set 5 years in advance. Now, one time that I did this, I was being a little clever. I made the CFO of the client the new CEO of the company 5 years from now. And of course, he loved that. But besides that, I laid out, working backwards, I laid out all the projects that they did and the transformational things that they passed on. And what became real clear was that they were working on a bunch of stuff today that wasn't going to make any real difference. And the CFO and all of the other C-level executives in this room, when they read this article, I even made a fake cover for the magazine and attached it all together. And they stopped and I made them stop and read it the first thing that day. And the CFO jumps up. He was the first one to finish. And he goes, I don't care what Brian's got, set up for the rest of our session today. I just wanted one thing. Does anybody around this table not support that vision of what this company could be? Because I talked about they're going to be like 3 times bigger and all this other kind of stuff in the article. And before anybody could even come up with an answer to that, he goes, because if you're not, I need you to leave now. I'm going to hire somebody else into this company that does support this kind of vision and direction. So I'm giving you this technique because it works, but I'm also giving it to you because it turns out that when you have to work backwards, use a completely different part of your brain. And it helps you get incredibly focused on what you're going to do. At this client, a huge global manufacturer, one of the things that made him start talking about almost within a moment of having read that article was why were they implementing this big ERP package in South America and they killed this huge project right there. I mean, in a matter of minutes, it was gone. And that's how they needed to be focused on the big change coming up. And that's the thing I think a lot of companies and people forget. Is your firm only has enough bandwidth to do just a few big transformational initiatives. So it's got to pick them and pick them well. And anything else, frankly, isn't big enough to really make a big difference and needs to be dismissed. That's tough to say, but it is very, very accurate about what has to happen. And let me tell you something else. The person in your firm, your project team that can write that article, the Amazon press release or what have you, the one who can write that article, all of a sudden jumps to like top of the class They're somebody who understands transformation and knows what we're really trying to do. You'll either make your career or you'll go down in flames on it, but by God, it'll be a defining moment in your career nonetheless. It's a good deal. Now, some people really want to pick, they want this topic to be about picking all the right technology. I hope you don't use any of these. Anybody here still using punch cards? 80-column punch cards or 6250 BPI real estate? Believe it or not, these things I have in my office, I give them out as gag swag sometimes on public speaking deals. And I sure hope your data center looks a lot better than this one I took a picture of out at a client. But the technology, you need something that carries some risk, or it's got some, it may still have some kinks to be ironed out of it, or some functionality that hasn't been fully built into it yet. And that's okay, because you're going for something that's going to deliver competitive advantage, not competitive parity. Now, hardest thing in HR is trying to find out what can we do that's going to give our HR organization competitive advantage. That's a tough question, because almost everything around in HR technology is around competitive parity. It's getting caught up to everybody else. I know you're going to be using a lot of these kind of tools. You'll see bits and pieces of these embedded in all kinds of solutions out there. I didn't realize until I was on the plane. There's a slide that I do have. If somebody wants to just come see me, but I actually have all kinds of examples of how you use these different advanced technologies in more thoughtful ways in the HR space. I'll be keeping kind of a running list of what are all the new kind of possibilities of what the new level nature of work looks like. And for you, you may find out that who is going to help you with this transition is not the partners you're used to for the last couple of decades, whatever. An old school integrator may not know much or enough about some of the new capabilities and things like artificial intelligence or what have you to actually be any good to you. In fact, you personally may know more about some of these advanced technologies than a salesperson from some of those kind of integrators. That's not something to be proud of. So regardless, I'm going to tell you that there are definitely challenges in picking the right people, the team, and if you're not looking outside your usual circles of technology and insights, then you're not doing something right. You're only going to become cosmopolitan by expanding out your sphere of influence or, interest. Which leads us to this question: what is the best source for great insights in these new transformational technologies? Trick question, there isn't one. But anybody want to give me an example of where they would learn stuff? I'm going to tell you now, guys, that some of the best places for this technology or this insight are, believe it or not, start at a show like this. But the one thing you want to bug people about is find out where there are these venture capital pitch sessions. Sometimes there are conferences where startups can go pitch in front of a room full of VCs to go get funding. If you thought you've heard it all and seen it all, you haven't been to one of those meetings. I mean, there are going to be people showing up with some really wild ideas. I saw somebody wanted to sell a beer keg refrigerator that you could bring to work, and they were they had a whole business model on how they refill it and use all kind of technology for that. Of course, that just begs the question: should any employer actually have a beer keg at work? But that's another problem right there. But there's some great stuff. You also want to be able to pick the right team, and these are obvious points you're going to think. I think these projects certainly have different set of skill requirements than what you're used to, and I would also tell you that the change management challenges you're going to encounter with a transformative project are legendary and huge. The usual problem you have when you implemented, let's say, you went to a new payroll system. using big data that we acquired from an external entity to help us do a better job of monitoring our recruiting spend on third-party websites. And the question is, do I even have anybody in recruiting and HR that knows anything about big data, ping, those kind of, Hadoop and other kind of technologies? And the answer is probably going to be no. And so you've got skills deserts out there that have to be dealt with. And so you need to think about it's not just training on a new system, it's all the other stuff that you're going to need to maintain the new environment with the new technologies moving forward. And I do believe that if it's a transformative project, it is going to upset the status quo. It will upset things. And you are going to bother people, but you'll also, and I see this right now I'll give you this example. I helped out a client. I had the luxury of working on a Factory of the Future initiative for a multinational during the middle of the pandemic. And this was new to me. I've never done anything like this and never have been to the client sites at all. One of the things that was interesting about that was, for all the change we were talking about, I found that the biggest problem this company had is they had grown through acquisitions, but they never bothered to change the compensation plans and bonuses of the individual plant operators for the facilities they bought. The plant operators still maintain the relationship with their customers, historical customers. And that's creating all kinds of ESG, environmental, social, and governance problems for the company. Because, for example, this gentleman may have relationships with a number of big customers, but because his plant is in, let's say, Australia, and the customers are like in South Korea, even though there is a local facility that could serve them and do it with a much lower carbon footprint, they've never rationalized the supply chain or the value chain for the company, and they're messed up like that because they never had the courage to make the fundamental changes to the performance and pay and bonus systems that were used in that firm. Well, they were until I pointed that out to the CEO. And I know there's some uncomfortable change going on there. All right, the other thing I want to tell you is transformational stuff. You got to have some great leaders doing this. And the leaders have to have what I call political capital. They have to have a lot of political capital, and they're going to burn it up on this. And for those of you all those who have shared service operations, I don't know if you were there when the shared service entity was set up, but man, that takes somebody who knows how to navigate in the company and knows how to tell some very powerful people no sometimes. And that's somebody who's got lots of political capital. These projects chew up people who don't have enough capital to survive. And I'll let you guys figure out who you think the best team leader and team members would be in your firm, but you've got to have an idea who those are going to be, or you're never going to get this project off the ground. It doesn't have to be you, but you really have to have somebody who's going to step up and take the management. So, just to recap, I don't think you can build a business case on doing one of these big transformation deals unless you're super solid on knowing where you're at. And that was one of the reasons I showed you that pyramid, is you got to get everybody in the company on the same page, literally, that where we're at and where we need to go and what our priorities are going to be all about. I'm not trying to turn that into strategy on a box, but that's probably the first place you start. A lot of companies get all hung up immediately on the financial rationale, and I think that's the wrong plane to get stuck on right off the bat. Why? Because I know the prices of technology continue to always keep plummeting over time. So even if it's something that looks expensive now, if you build for convergence, you'll see the cost curve come at it and attack it and take it down. Some of the common problems, these are things, leaders and leadership, and do I have enough of them? Do I have the political power to make it happen? And where we're going to get the help from the outside. And by all means, I'm from Texas, so we like to talk about sometimes you got to flip over rocks and see what's underneath them. And you might want going to find some other good stuff underneath some other rocks. So with that, I'm going to wrap it. I didn't make this interactive, but I know I had a lot of good stuff that I thought to cover with you. I hope you guys got some value out of this. And thank you for your time.